Hi, this is Dr. Shanmugapriya, and I have initiated this YouTube channel mainly to stimulate an interest for clinical biochemistry among medical professionals and to make you relish the importance of applying biochemistry to your clinical practice. And the topic that is chosen for this presentation is congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And why this topic now? Basically, because I've seen many medical students and clinicians trying to memorize the algorithm for diagnosing congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So I thought I should pitch in and I should tell you the biochemical basis of the various congenital adrenal hyperplasias. And once you understand the biochemical basis of these conditions, you don't have to memorize the algorithm. It is going to be a simple flowchart that you by yourself will be able to put forth in your mind. Okay, so that's the basis for this topic. So watch this video till the end, because at the end of this video, I'll be giving you the algorithm to make a diagnosis of the various congenital adrenal hyperplasias. So what are the objectives of this session? Because an understanding of the function of various adrenal cortical hormones is essential for you to understand these disorders, my first objective would be to give you an introduction to adrenal steroid hormones and their functions. And based on that, I'll tell you the definition of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and I'll also tell you the expected clinical presentation of these disorders. And then I'll tell you the normal steps of steroid hormone synthesis, an understanding of which will help you in the next objective, wherein we'll be understanding the clinical features of various disorders. And finally, as I said, I'll also be giving you the algorithm. To start with, introduction to functions of adrenal steroid hormones. So we know adrenal cortex has got three zones. The first one is zona glomerulosa, and then it is fasciculata, and finally it is reticularis. And as the name indicates, glomerulosa function is to release the mineralocorticoid aldosterone. Okay, it releases the mineralocorticoid aldosterone. Fasciculata releases the glucocorticoid cortisol, and reticularis releases sex steroids. When I say sex steroids, we know adrenal cortex principally releases adrenal androgens. And once these androgens are acted upon by aromatase, these androgens get converted to estrogens. Now, what is the function of aldosterone? You know, aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid which helps in sodium and water reabsorption. It helps in sodium and water reabsorption. It causes potassium and H plus secretion. So this will tell you what is expected when aldosterone is not getting synthesized in a person for any reason. When aldosterone is not synthesized, sodium and water won't be reabsorbed. Sodium and water gets lost. So this would present as salt wasting forms. So if you call a particular congenital adrenal hyperplasia as a salt wasting form, it means it's because of decreased aldosterone synthesis. Now, in a salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, what you would expect is hyponatremia, hypotension, hyperkalemia, and because H plus is not getting secreted and H plus gets accumulated within the circulation, it presents as normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So in the speed learning app, I've told you how to classify metabolic acidosis, and if you look at or watch that video, you'll understand why this presents as normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay, so these are the features which are expected when there is low aldosterone: hyponatremia, hypotension, hyperkalemia, and normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay. Now cortisol. What are the functions of cortisol, which is a glucocorticoid? For you to simply remember the function of glucocorticoid, all that you will have to know is it's a counter-regulatory hormone of insulin. So if it acts against insulin, what do you think is its principal function? Principal function is to increase blood glucose. And apart from this primary function, you know, glucocorticoid is a catabolic hormone. So what does it cause? It causes peripheral lipolysis, it causes protein catabolism, it causes an increase in blood pressure. So all those are secondary actions of glucocorticoids. So what do you expect when glucocorticoid concentration is low in a person? In that case, you expect hypoglycemia. And apart from this, please remember glucocorticoid cortisol is the principal regulator of ACTH secretion. You know, pituitary, anterior pituitary hormone ACTH stimulates all three zones. Yeah, it stimulates zona glomerulosa, fasciculata and reticularis to release the mineralocorticoid aldosterone, to release the glucocorticoid cortisol and to release the sex steroids androgens. But ACTH in a feedback mechanism is inhibited only by the glucocorticoid cortisol. It is not inhibited by aldosterone, it is not inhibited by sex steroids, it's in a feedback mechanism inhibited only by the glucocorticoid cortisol. So tell me, what do you expect when cortisol secretion is decreased in a congenital adrenal hyperplasia? That in a feedback mechanism stimulates ACTH. When ACTH is stimulated, it stimulates adrenal cortical cells to undergo hyperplasia. And that is why the name adrenal hyperplasia. So in all these congenital adrenal hyperplasias, wherever may be the enzyme block, ultimately what is not produced? Cortisol is not produced. When cortisol is not produced, in a feedback mechanism, what is stimulated? ACTH is stimulated, and that ACTH causes adrenal glands to undergo hyperplasia. That is by the name congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And not just that, this ACTH stimulates all adrenal cortical cells to take up excess cholesterol, and these cholesterol will be diverted towards forming intermediates prior to the block. So depending upon the enzyme block, intermediates would accumulate, and those intermediates will determine the ultimate clinical feature of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And the third point which you should know about high ACTH release is ACTH is released along with gamma MSH. Whenever anterior pituitary corticotrope cells release ACTH, they get released along with gamma MSH, and this gamma MSH is the reason for pigmentation. So all congenital adrenal hyperplasias, it can be a 21 beta hydroxylase defect, it can be an 11 beta hydroxylase defect, whatever may be the enzyme defect it is. All congenital adrenal hyperplasias, patients present with hyperpigmentation, because in all these conditions ACTH release is increased, that is released along with gamma MSH that causes pigmentation. So if there is low glucocorticoid synthesis, which is a characteristic feature of every congenital adrenal hyperplasia, what you expect is hypoglycemia. And because of feedback stimulation of ACTH, you expect adrenal hyperplasia, and you expect intermediates to accumulate, and depending upon what intermediate accumulates, clinical features would differ. And because ACTH is released along with gamma MSH, hyperpigmentation is also a feature of this condition. Okay. Now what happens when sex steroid synthesis is affected? When sex steroid synthesis is affected, depending upon whether it's a male child or a female child, presentation would differ. When sex steroid production is decreased in a male, what do you expect? Yeah, if it's a male, you know by default every fetus develops as a female. We know that, right? By default every fetus develops as a female. And only when you specify a fetus with androgens, there will be virilization. So if it is a male with XY chromosome, and if there is a congenital adrenal hyperplasia which does not allow adrenal androgens to be synthesized, what do you expect in that fetus? Though genetically the person is a male, there is no specific information that is given to the fetus to develop into a male. So the fetus will be born as a female. The fetus will be identified as a female fetus because secondary sexual characteristics will be of female type. External genitalia will be of female type. So it causes male pseudohermaphroditism. It causes male pseudohermaphroditism. And please remember, not in all congenital adrenal hyperplasias androgens are not getting synthesized. In many congenital adrenal hyperplasias, when there is a block, yeah, the excess cholesterol gets diverted towards forming androgen. So in many of the congenital adrenal hyperplasias, androgens are produced in excess. So when androgens are produced in excess in a female fetus, it causes pseudohermaphroditism. Yeah, in a female fetus, it causes female pseudohermaphroditism or female virilization. It causes female virilization when androgen production is excess. In a male fetus, when androgen production is excess, it causes male precocious pseudopuberty. In a male fetus, it causes male precocious pseudopuberty. So this is about an introduction to adrenal steroid hormones. Yeah, having understood these features of adrenal steroid hormones, now you will be able to define congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So what is congenital adrenal hyperplasia? It is a group of autosomal recessive disorders of enzymes involved in adrenal cortical hormone synthesis. Yeah, enzymes involved in adrenal cortical hormone synthesis. This is the definition for congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So what is congenital adrenal hyperplasia? Congenital adrenal hyperplasias are a group of autosomal recessive disorders of enzymes involved in adrenal cortical hormone synthesis. And in all these disorders, the common feature that is observed is low cortisol. And when there is low cortisol, as I told you, there is feedback stimulation of ACTH. And this ACTH stimulates adrenal cortical cells to undergo hyperplasia. And because adrenal cortical gland has undergone hyperplasia, it's called as adrenal hyperplasia. And along with ACTH, as I said, gamma MSH gets released, so that causes pigmentation. This is the definition of this condition. Now about clinical features of congenital adrenal hyperplasias that also you know. Depending upon where the block is, the presentation is going to differ. If there is low aldosterone, it is going to present a salt wasting form. And if the enzyme block is in such a way that there is an increase in mineralocorticoid activity. So not in all congenital adrenal hyperplasias aldosterone level is low. There are some conditions wherein the block is in such a way that an intermediate accumulates which has got mineralocorticoid activity, and in that case it is going to present as hypertensive forms. So some congenital adrenal hyperplasias present as salt wasting forms, some present as hypertensive forms. Okay. And if there is low sex steroid synthesis, predominantly it is considered as low androgen. So if it is low androgen synthesis, if it's a male fetus, what will it present as? It presents as male pseudohermaphroditism, because in this case, though genetically the person has got XY, because there is no adrenal androgen, there is no proper internal and external genitalial development of male type. Particularly external genitalial development will be of female type. So in this case, a child will be reared as a female, and the child would present with primary amenorrhea. And if you do a genetic assessment, you will see that the person has got XY chromosome. Yeah, so that is possible when androgens are not formed. And some conditions present with excess sex steroids, excess androgen. So if there is excess androgen, if it is a female fetus, yeah, if it's a female fetus, it presents as virilization. If it's a male fetus, because the male fetus is getting exposed to androgen in excess well in advance. Yeah, the male fetus getting exposed to excess androgen well in advance. It causes precocious puberty, and it is not true precocious puberty, it is pseudo precocious puberty. And this is also explained in the speed learning app videos. What is true precocious puberty and what is pseudo precocious puberty? For now, just remember it causes male pseudo precocious puberty. So these are the features that you can expect in congenital adrenal hyperplasias. Now to understand which congenital adrenal hyperplasia presents with what kind of clinical features, you need to know the normal steps of steroid hormone synthesis. Okay, so normal step of steroid hormone synthesis should begin with cholesterol because all steroid hormones are synthesized from cholesterol. So the first step is cholesterol is taken up. Yeah, the first step is cholesterol is taken up by adrenal cortical cells, and within adrenal cortical cells, because these steroid hormones get synthesized in mitochondria, they're supposed to cross the inner mitochondrial membrane to get into the matrix. So the protein which takes cholesterol into mitochondria is called as a star protein. So what does star protein stand for? It is steroidogenic acute reactive protein. Yeah, steroidogenic acute reactive protein is the protein which takes cholesterol from cytoplasm into mitochondria. And as far as cholesterol is concerned, we call it as a C17, we call it as a C27 steroid. We call it as a C27 steroid because it has got totally 27 carbon atoms. So why am I telling you about C27 steroids? Because sometimes you fumble when you are asked what are C21 steroids, what are C19 steroids, what are C18 steroids, and no point just memorizing it. If you know the steps of steroid hormone synthesis, even in the deepest of your sleep, if you're woken up, you'll be able to answer that androgens are C19 steroids, estrogens are C18 steroids, progesterone is a C21 steroid. So have a close concentration on this discussion. So the precursor cholesterol is a C27 steroid because totally it has got 27 carbon atoms. And the first enzyme to act on cholesterol is cholesterol desmolase. The first enzyme is cholesterol desmolase, and cholesterol desmolase removes 6 carbon atoms. Let me show it in green color. It removes 6 carbon atoms from C27 steroid. Thereby cholesterol is converted to pregnenolone. So the first product which you get from cholesterol is pregnenolone after removing 6 carbon atoms. So what kind of steroid is this pregnenolone? It is a C21 steroid. Yeah, it is a C21 steroid. Now the next enzyme is 17-alpha hydroxylase. The next enzyme is 17-alpha hydroxylase, which converts pregnenolone to 17-hydroxypregnenolone. Now, the next enzyme is 1720 lyase. The next enzyme is 1720 lyase, which removes 2 carbon atoms and it converts 17-hydroxypregnenolone to the first androgen, which is DHEA. So from a 21 steroid, if you remove 2 carbon atoms, the product DHEA is a C19 steroid. Do you understand this? It is a C19 steroid, which means all androgens. What are the androgens you get from DHEA? Androstenedione, testosterone, dihydroxytestosterone. They are all C19 steroids. And how do you convert these androgens to estrogens? By the action of aromatase. And that aromatase removes 1 carbon atom. So all estrogens, estrone, estradiol, estriol, they are all C18 steroids. Whereas the remaining, what is remaining? The other steroid hormones would include progesterone, right? It also includes aldosterone. It also includes cortisol. So progesterone, aldosterone, cortisol, all these are formed from pregnenolone. So they are all C21 steroids. So what are the C21 steroids? Progesterone, aldosterone, cortisol or C21 steroids. Androgens are C19 steroids. Estrogens are C18 steroids. Okay. Now from pregnenolone, this pregnenolone is acted upon by the next enzyme 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. The next enzyme is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, and remember that's an enzyme which acts on pregnenolone. It also acts on 17-hydroxypregnenolone. It also acts on DHEA. So what is the common enzyme? The common enzyme is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. And the products which you get from these substrates are pregnenolone becomes progesterone. 17-hydroxypregnenolone becomes 17-hydroxyprogesterone. DHEA becomes androstenedione. Yeah, DHEA becomes androstenedione. So please remember, androstenedione need not be formed only from DHEA by the action of 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Androstenedione can also be formed from progesterone. When which enzyme acts on it? The same 17-alpha hydroxylase acts on it, can convert progesterone to 17-hydroxyprogesterone. And when 17-hydroxyprogesterone is acted upon by 1720 lyase, it can be converted. 17-hydroxyprogesterone can be converted to androstenedione. So androstenedione can be formed either through this route or through this route. And once androstenedione is formed, activity in reticularis is over. Okay. Now it's going to, the remaining steps happen only in glomerulosa and fasciculata. So what is the next enzyme as far as glomerulosa and fasciculata are concerned? It is the famous 21-beta hydroxylase. So the next enzyme is 21-beta hydroxylase, which acts on progesterone and 17-hydroxyprogesterone, converting these two into 11-deoxycorticosterone and 11-deoxycortisol. Do you understand this? 21-beta hydroxylase converts progesterone and 17-hydroxyprogesterone into 11-deoxycorticosterone and 11-deoxycortisol, which means this conversion is also possible. So when 17-alpha hydroxylase acts on 11-deoxycorticosterone, it can become 11-deoxycortisol. Now the last enzyme, the last enzyme is 11-beta hydroxylase. So 11-beta hydroxylase converts 11-deoxycorticosterone to corticosterone. And the same 11-beta hydroxylase converts 11-deoxycortisol into cortisol. So this happens in fasciculata, which is related to synthesizing glucocorticoid. Whereas if it is glomerulosa, what is the product that you expect in glomerulosa? It is aldosterone. So if it is glomerulosa, 11-deoxycorticosterone is acted upon by. So if it is glomerulosa, the next enzyme is aldosterone synthase. And aldosterone synthase converts 11-deoxycorticosterone to aldosterone. This is how the three steroid hormones get synthesized in the three zones of adrenal cortex. So I'm repeating it. The first step is cholesterol is taken up by adrenal cortical cells. And from cytoplasm, to move cholesterol to mitochondria, we are dependent on STAR protein, which is steroidogenic acute reactive protein. After cholesterol reaches cytoplasm, cholesterol, a C27 steroid, is acted upon by cholesterol desmolase, which removes 6 carbon atoms, and cholesterol is converted to a C21 steroid, which is pregnenolone. Now, pregnenolone is acted upon by 17-alpha hydroxylase. It's converted to 17-hydroxypregnenolone. And when 1720 lyase removes 2 carbon atoms from 17-hydroxypregnenolone, it becomes DHEA, the first androgen. From 21 steroid, because you have removed 2 carbon atoms, the product DHEA is a C19 steroid. Okay. Now pregnenolone, 17-hydroxypregnenolone and DHEA. Please follow all these steps, because only when you know the sequence of this step, you will understand features of congenital adrenal hyperplasias. So pregnenolone, 17-hydroxypregnenolone and DHEA all three are acted upon by the next enzyme, which is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. The common enzyme converts pregnenolone, 17-hydroxypregnenolone and DHEA to progesterone, 17-hydroxyprogesterone and androstenedione. And this conversion is also possible wherein progesterone can become 17-hydroxyprogesterone and 17-hydroxyprogesterone can become androstenedione. And once androstenedione is formed, activity in reticularis is over. So only in glomerulosa and fasciculata, the next enzyme is 21-beta hydroxylase. And 21-beta hydroxylase converts progesterone and 17-hydroxyprogesterone to 11-deoxycorticosterone and 11-deoxycortisol. And 11-deoxycorticosterone can be converted to 11-deoxycortisol by 17-alpha hydroxylase. Now, once this is formed, activity in glomerulosa and fasciculata would be different. Okay, if it is glomerulosa, you know it has to synthesize aldosterone, which means the enzyme has to be aldosterone synthase. So in glomerulosa, aldosterone synthase converts 11-deoxycorticosterone to aldosterone. Whereas if it's fasciculata, the next enzyme is 11-beta hydroxylase, which converts 11-deoxycorticosterone and 11-deoxycortisol to form corticosterone and cortisol. These are the enzymes and the steps involved in normal steroid hormone synthesis. Okay. Now, what happens when the first protein, what is the first protein? The first protein is the first protein is star protein. When that protein is defective, what do you expect? When that protein is defective, mitochondria is not able to take up cholesterol. Even the precursor is missing. So none of these hormones can be synthesized. But luckily, star protein is not necessary for progesterone synthesis in placenta. In placenta also you have to synthesize progesterone. But for placental progesterone synthesis, this star protein is not essential. So if the fetus has got a star protein defect, in adrenal cortex, none of these hormones get synthesized. The placental progesterone synthesis goes uninhibited. So there will be continuation of pregnancy. Okay. And at the time of birth, what would you observe? At the time of birth, there is low cortisol, there is low aldosterone, there is low sex steroids. Okay. So what happens when there is low cortisol? When there is low cortisol, it will present as hypoglycemia. And when there is low cortisol, there is feedback stimulation of ACTH, and ACTH stimulates adrenal cortical cells to take up excess cholesterol, but this cholesterol is not able to get into mitochondria. So cholesterol accumulates within cytoplasm, causing lipoid changes in the adrenal cortex. So we call this condition as lipoid congenital adrenal hyperplasia. We call star protein defect as lipoid congenital adrenal hyperplasia because you find enlargement of adrenal cortex in this condition because of lipoidal changes. And when there is low mineralocorticoid, what will you expect? Salt wasting form. So star protein defect presents as a salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. In the sense you find hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, hyperpigmentation caused by ACTH, excess ACTH release, and along with that, because there is lipoidal changes in the adrenal cortex enlargement will be observed on ultrasonogram. Okay, and there is no adrenal androgen synthesis. So what happens if it's a male fetus? You're not specifying the male fetus with androgen. So if it's a male fetus, it will present with female external genitalia. So it causes male pseudohermaphroditism. It causes male pseudohermaphroditism, and it presents as primary amenorrhea at a later stage. What happens in a female fetus? Female fetus by default develops as a female. So at the time of birth, if it's a female fetus, it's going to be normal. So please remember this interesting fact. Lipoid congenital adrenal hyperplasias are always diagnosed in a female child. Do you understand this? Lipoid congenital adrenal hyperplasias are always diagnosed in a female child. Only when you do a genetic sex determination, sometimes it will be XY, sometimes it will be XX. Okay, that's about star protein defect. What happens when cholesterol desmolase is defective? Then cholesterol desmolase is defective. This is an enzyme which is involved not only in adrenal cortical steroid hormone synthesis, but also in placental hormone synthesis. So placental progesterone is not synthesized for this fetus. Progesterone is necessary for continuation of pregnancy. So this causes death in utero. And that is why you would have never come across this term congenital adrenal hyperplasia due to cholesterol desmolase defect, because it causes death in utero. Now, what happens when 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase is defective? When 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase is defective, all these get blocked. Okay, so you know the manifestations. First, there is no glucocorticoid. So it causes hypoglycemia, feedback stimulation of ACTH causing hyperpigmentation and adrenal hyperplasia. And additionally, there is no aldosterone, because this is the route by which aldosterone also gets synthesized. So there is no aldosterone. So what will you find? There will be salt wasting form. So you find hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, aldosterone level is low, yeah, ACTH level is high. So all these manifestations, salt, the classical salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia is observed in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Okay, and there is no androstenedione synthesis. But when there is excess cholesterol that is taken up because of ACTH stimulation, it is diverted to form DHEA. So when there is excess DHEA production, yeah, if it's a female fetus, you are specifying the female fetus with an androgen, right? So what do you expect? Virilization. So if it's a female fetus, you expect virilization. What happens in a male fetus? Male fetus wants dihydroxytestosterone to form proper male type of external genitalia. Yeah, even testosterone is not sufficient. Male fetuses need dihydroxytestosterone for male type of external genitalia to get established. And in this condition, a precursor much before testosterone is not getting synthesized. So no testosterone, no dihydroxytestosterone. So proper male type of external genitalia might be missing in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. I'm not saying always. You might have a difficulty in sex assigning in a male fetus because no testosterone and no dihydroxytestosterone. Otherwise, it's going to be normal. So that's about 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Now, what if it's 21-beta hydroxylase defect? Almost similar, right? Even in 21-beta hydroxylase defect, what is not formed? Aldosterone is not formed. So salt wasting form. Okay. No cortisol. So feedback stimulation of ACTH causes hyperpigmentation. ACTH stimulates adrenal cortical cells to take up excess cholesterol. The excess cholesterol will be diverted towards forming. The block is here. So everything will be diverted towards forming androstenedione. Do you understand this? So the difference between 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect and 21-beta hydroxylase defect is, in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, it's DHEA which accumulates, which is not a strong androgen. Whereas in 21-beta hydroxylase defect, it is androstenedione that is formed, which is a strong androgen because it can form testosterone and dihydroxytestosterone. So what happens in a female fetus? Obviously, it presents with virilization. What happens in a male fetus? excess androgen exposure well in advance. So it causes male precocious pseudopuberty. Okay, so that's about 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect and 21-beta hydroxylase defect. So, if a child presents either soon after birth or few months later presents with a salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So what is salt wasting form? How do you think it would present? As I've already told you, it would present as hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. And if you estimate aldosterone levels, because whenever you find hyponatremia and hyperkalemia, you would your first suspicion would be hypoaldosteronism. So if you estimate aldosterone levels as expected, it would be low, and ACTH levels will be high, and renin, because there is feedback stimulation caused by hyponatremia and hypovolemia, renin levels would be high. And additionally, you also find pigmentation. So if you find this clinical picture, you would suspect a salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and there are 3 possibilities under this category. There are 3 congenital adrenal hyperplasias which would present a salt wasting form. One is the most common congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is 21 beta hydroxylase defect, in which case it will be a classical salt wasting form. Or it can be a star protein defect, which as I told you is called as lipoid CAH, lipoid congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Or it can be 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Now, how do you differentiate these 3 conditions? These 3 conditions can be differentiated just by estimating one parameter, which is 17-hydroxyprogesterone. And the 17-hydroxyprogesterone levels will be high in 21-beta hydroxylase defect, whereas it is low in both star protein defect and in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Because if you can recall, 17-hydroxyprogesterone is formed before 21-beta hydroxylase can act on it. So when there is 21-beta hydroxylase defect, 17-hydroxyprogesterone levels will be high. Whereas if it's a defect of star protein or 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, 17-hydroxyprogesterone cannot be even formed. So using 17-hydroxyprogesterone levels, you can differentiate 21-beta hydroxylase defect from star protein defect and 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. And this is the basis of why we estimate 17-hydroxyprogesterone as one of the parameters in newborn screening programs, because we assume that the common congenital adrenal hyperplasia 21-beta hydroxylase defect would be most commonly the case. We just assume that, and we estimate 17-hydroxyprogesterone, and if that level is high, it is 21-beta hydroxylase defect. And that means we have to treat the newborn immediately with hydrocortisone. And it is not just our assumption, it is also a matter of priority. Because if it's 21-beta hydroxylase defect, the probability that the neonate presents with hypoadrenal crisis is high. So we have to make a diagnosis of congenital adrenal hyperplasia due to 21-beta hydroxylase defect earlier, and that is why we use 17-hydroxyprogesterone as one of the parameters in newborn screening programs. Okay, so using this we can differentiate 21-beta hydroxylase defect. But how will you differentiate star protein defect from 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect? Because the presentation in both the cases would be the same. The presentation would be only in the neonatal period. It will take few months or even few years for these 2 conditions to present with. And when it presents, it will be classically the salt wasting form, and blood parameters almost will be similar in both the cases. So how do you differentiate these 2 conditions? Do an ultrasound. If ultrasound shows adrenal cortical enlargement with lipoidal changes, then it is mostly star protein defect. That is one way. Another way is you checking androgen synthesis and estrogen synthesis. I want you to remember that in star protein defect, no androgen, no estrogen. So what happens in a genetic male? In a genetic male in star protein defect, though the person has got XY chromosome, because androgen is not getting synthesized, what did I say? Internal genitalia will be of female type and external genitalia will be female type. So the child will be reared as a female. Okay, in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, DHEA is formed. It is just that it's not a perfect androgen, but it can support male type of external genitalial development. But there can be some defects in the external genitalia, but it will be of male type. So if you see a genetic male presenting with male type of external genitalia, then it is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, whereas a genetic male presenting as a female external genitalial development is most commonly star protein defect. Now, what happens in females? This is about differentiating a male fetus. What if it's a female fetus? If it's a female fetus, star protein defect, you won't find any change as far as genital development is concerned. Maybe it will present as hypogonadism because estrogen is not formed. But in the newborn period, you won't be able to find out any defect in the star protein defect. Whereas if it's 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, the DHEA would cause virilization. Is that clear? So by ultrasound, if you find congenital, if you find adrenal enlargement with lipoidal changes, it is star protein defect. And if it's a male fetus, genetic male XY presenting as female, it is star protein defect. Genetic male presenting as a male, it is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Females presenting just with hypogonadism is star protein defect. And females presenting with virilization is 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. This is the algorithm that you can use if there is a salt wasting form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Now to understand the other category of congenital adrenal hyperplasias, which are hypertensive forms of congenital adrenal hyperplasias, you will have to know about two disorders. One is 17-alpha hydroxylase defect and the other one is 11-beta hydroxylase defect. Okay. First, let me tell you about 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. In 17-alpha hydroxylase defect, what is missing? One is cortisol and the other one is all these sex steroids. And you know what happens when there is low cortisol? You know there will be feedback stimulation of ACTH and this causes congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And you know this ACTH stimulates adrenal cortical cells to take up excess cholesterol. And the excess cholesterol is diverted towards forming 11-deoxycorticosterone and corticosterone. Yeah, it is diverted towards forming 11-deoxycorticosterone, corticosterone and aldosterone. And all these have mineralocorticoid activities. So in 17-alpha hydroxylase defect, there is excess mineralocorticoid. What happens when there is excess mineralocorticoid? You know, excess sodium and water reabsorption would cause hypernatremia. Yeah, it would cause hypernatremia, hypokalemia. Yeah, and when there is hypernatremia and hypokalemia, renin levels will be low. So if you find high ACTH, yeah, you find high ACTH to be accompanied by hypernatremia, hypokalemia and low renin, yeah, you can suspect one or the other hypertensive form of congenital adrenal hyperplasias. One is 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. And please remember, in 17-alpha hydroxylase defect, there is no androgen and estrogen synthesis. So what happens in a male fetus? Exactly like what I told you for star protein defect. Yeah, in star protein defect, there is no cholesterol getting into any of these pathways. So no androgen. Similarly, even 17-alpha hydroxylase defect, no male sex hormone synthesis. So in a male fetus, you're not specifying the male fetus with male sex hormones. So by default, the fetus would develop as a female as far as internal genitalia and external genitalia are concerned. So this will also cause male pseudohermaphroditism. So what are the two congenital adrenal hyperplasias which present as male pseudohermaphroditism? One is the lipoid CAH. Yeah, lipoid CAH, which is caused by a defect of star protein. That is one cause. And the second cause is what we are discussing now, 17 alpha hydroxylase defect. Both these conditions would present as male pseudohermaphroditism. In a female fetus, by default, the fetus develops as a female. But when there is no estrogen, maybe there will be a defect in the secondary sexual characteristics development, and that can be amenorrhea. Okay, so that's about 17 alpha hydroxylase defect. Now, what if it's a 11 beta hydroxylase defect? This is the second common congenital adrenal hyperplasia. The most common one is 21 beta hydroxylase defect. The second common is 11 beta hydroxylase defect. So in 11 beta hydroxylase defect, again what is not formed? Cortisol is not formed. That is why I told you in all congenital adrenal hyperplasias, the one common element that is missing is cortisol. And that is why in all these conditions there is excess ACTH. That is why in all these conditions you find adrenal hyperplasia and hyperpigmentation. Okay, so there is low cortisol. When there is low cortisol, feedback stimulation of ACTH, and this ACTH stimulates adrenal cortical cells to take up excess cholesterol. And in this case, excess cholesterol is diverted towards forming 11-deoxycorticosterone, 11-deoxycortisol, and all androgens and estrogens get synthesized in excess. And 11-deoxycorticosterone has got a mineralocorticoid activity. So excess mineralocorticoid, though it's not aldosterone, it's yet to form aldosterone, but 11-deoxycorticosterone has got mineralocorticoid activity. So excess mineralocorticoid causes hypernatremia, hypokalemia, and ACTH level is high and there is low renin. Okay, but what is the difference here? In this case, androgens are produced in excess. So what happens in a male fetus? Genetic male will develop as a male, and it will present as male precocious pseudo-puberty. It will present as male precocious pseudo-puberty. What happens in a female? Virilization in a female. Okay, so this is about hypertensive form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So if you find a neonate or a young child presenting with hypernatremia, hypokalemia, right? Hypernatremia, hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis, low with high ACTH, hyperpigmentation, low renin, you're going to suspect hypertensive form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This can be because of two defects. One is a relatively common 11 beta hydroxylase defect. The other one is 17 alpha hydroxylase defect. To differentiate the two conditions, you can estimate 11 deoxycorticosterone. Yeah, you can estimate 11 deoxycorticosterone. And if 11-deoxycorticosterone is elevated, it is like a second affirmation for you that it is one of the hypertensive form of congenital adrenal hyperplasias. Now, to differentiate the two conditions, it is done clinically. So, what will you observe clinically in 17 alpha hydroxylase defect? A genetic male presenting as a female, okay, or a female with hypogonadism. Whereas in the relatively common 11 beta hydroxylase defect, what you find is because in this condition excess androgen is produced, there will be male precocious pseudopuberty and female pseudohermaphroditism. Now, algorithm. Now you know the algorithm. We have already discussed everything. I'm going to just summarize it. Algorithm is you have to know whether it is a salt wasting form or a hypertensive form. If it is salt wasting form, what are the three causes I said? The common 21 beta hydroxylase defect, star protein defect, and 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. To differentiate these conditions, you have to estimate 17-hydroxyprogesterone. If the level is high, it is 21 beta hydroxylase defect, in which case you have to immediately start hydrocortisone. Otherwise, the probability that the neonate presents with hypoadrenal crisis is very high. If 17-hydroxyprogesterone is low, it is either star protein defect or 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. Now, these two conditions can be differentiated by ultrasound. You find lipoid changes and adrenal cortical enlargement in star protein defect that is not found in 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect. And additionally, star protein defect, no androgen is synthesized. So remember, star protein defects is always diagnosed in a female. It is either a true female with genetic XX or an XY who is reared as a female. So it is male pseudo-hermaphroditism or female hypogonadism. Okay. Whereas 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defect, most commonly male would be normal. At the time of birth, it's going to be normal. Maximally, what you can expect is hypospadiasis. And if it's a female, you can find virilization. Okay. Now, hypertensive form, you should know that there are two causes. One is 17-alpha hydroxylase defect and the other one is 11-beta hydroxylase defect. Now, you can differentiate the two conditions by clinical checking, the clinical examination. Male fetuses presenting with female external genitalia would be 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. Female with hypogonadism would be 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. Whereas male with precocious pseudopuberty, female pseudo-hermaphroditism would be 11-beta hydroxylase defect. So the summary is 21-beta hydroxylase defect is the most common form of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Star mutation, 21-beta hydroxylase defect, 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase defects, all these three conditions present a salt wasting form. For differentiating, you can estimate 17-hydroxyprogesterone. Whereas 11-beta hydroxylase defect and 17-alpha hydroxylase defects present as hypertensive forms. And if you are asked which of these conditions present as male pseudo-hermaphroditism, wherein genetic XY male is reared as a female, there are two possibilities. One is star protein defect and the other one is 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. So for diagnosing congenital adrenal hyperplasia, what are the investigations you will ask for? As you all know, electrolytes. Ask for sodium, potassium, and then ask for acid-base homeostasis check, which is nothing but arterial blood gas analysis. Okay, and then you estimate aldosterone levels, you estimate ACTH levels, you also estimate renin levels. Okay, and apart from all these, genetic sex determination is one of the components of investigation of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, because as I said, depending upon whether it's XX or XY and depending upon the presenting features, you can distinguish the condition. As I told you, specifically genetic male presenting as female narrows down the diagnosis to star protein defect and 17-alpha hydroxylase defect. Okay. So, thank you.